Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Planet Tyro to join us on our continuing Ralph Bakshi Retrospective. I'm here with my buddy, the youngest boy, the cat-faced killer. Welcome back, son.
Thanks, and hopefully this is not going to be as painful as everything else.
Well, the last review wasn't that bad, and if you know what I'm talking about, guys, last time we did I combined two titles together just because the other one, it was American Pop and Hey Good Looking. Again, guys, on the YouTube card, if you're listening on YouTube, watch on YouTube, you can click the link in the top right hand corner to go back to that discussion and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Or if you're listening on the podcast audio only, you can check the description there. I'll put a link to the whole playlist. Again, American Pop, good. Hey Good Looking, awful. And we're moving forward as we're really edging to the end of this retrospective, and we're getting to what is a highly acclaimed movie from Ralph Bakshi's Retrospective, which is 1983's Fire and Ice. And again, this is, for a very short synopsis, this is a very basic story, a very more basic sword and sorcery story. I find it ironic that when we spoke about wizards, he did a sorcery and technology story. This is a more conventional sword and sorcery story. And again, I don't want to get into too many spoilers. I want to keep this a bit brief. The stories are basically about these two warring nations, the Ice Nation, the Fire Nation. Again, very black and white. And one of the things I find interesting is the evil nation is actually the Ice Nation. The Ice Nation is trying to take over the whole world, and basically they're edging towards the Fire Nation. They want to take it over. The Ice Nation is ruled by this queen who's got a son. The son seems to be the one with all the power. His name is Necron. That's another name he used in Wizards as well. He's reusing some of the things he used in Wizards. And the Fire Nation, well, it's not just a Fire Nation. There's all these other nations that have been taken over. But the protagonists, or the people that are being oppressed, are a bunch of smaller nations. And in particular, 3 characters that are trying to fight back. But the way the story is told is not in a conventional way, because you're not necessarily following the protagonist. In this case, you're actually following 2 characters that are not per se the heroes. They're smaller characters that are trying to go up against the Ice Kingdom, but they're not the protagonists. But there is a protagonist or a hero, which is, I think his name is Darkwolf. And the whole story is very simple, laid back. And I'm going to dig more into it. I'm being a bit vague because I actually don't want to spoil the story, although it is simple, as I said a million times. But there's some things I liked about this movie. But as usual, I want to ask you, young boy, first what you thought of it. And then I'm going to go back into some details of what I thought and, some of the specifics of how it was made and whatnot. What did you think of this movie, Fire and Ice?
What did I think of this movie? I did like that it had a structured narrative, even if I didn't think it was super interesting. I love the way the animation was smooth. It was very smooth. It harkens back to like my childhood with the hand-drawn cartoons and how much more fluid they were than stuff nowadays. Nowadays stuff is really choppy, I think. It looks pretty, but it's choppy.
It's that rotoscoping, man. Bakshi's a king of rotoscoping, and again, he just does it so masterfully here. This
is towards the peak of his experience and knowledge with rotoscoping, clearly. I did like the artwork. I enjoy high fantasy. We've already gone over this before, and I think he made the settings of the world and how the characters look and everything very cool. One character made me kind of laugh. I kept like chuckling to myself that he was Batman because it's a cowl and his glowing eyes. But
that's Darkwolf.
That's Dark. Hero. Okay, so like Darkwolf is like every time he came on, he was like, there's my boy Batman. But I mean, other than that, it was it was an okay movie. Sure. And I mean, compared to the rest, I guess that makes it par excellence. I don't know.
I know why you're having trouble talking about the movie, because it's such to be critical, it's a very bland overall story. But the thing I like about this movie is actually not the story itself, because it is very bland, but the way it was put together, most of this movie is actually in silence. There's not a lot of dialogue speaking, especially when these 2 characters, I'll get their names in a minute, are just going through, trying to make their way to safety or just on this adventure. They don't talk a lot, and you're just enjoying the visuals and then going on the little misadventure. And I nearly fell asleep, but it was very nice. It was actually very relaxing. And ironically, I went to look at the feedback, and a lot of people said they actually enjoyed this movie. Again, having it in the background, unlike Bakshi's other movies, which are kind of a psychedelic trip or an unintentional hallucination. This movie is more very standard. This is Bakshi pulled back, reined all the way back to the point where you're like, this is just an 80s fantasy story that anyone could have made. I mean, you could criticize Bakshi on putting back too much, where usually with his stories he's really just throwing these insane characters at you. This feels very mature, very dry to the point where it feels kind of bland. But if you've watched Bakshi's movies before, it's kind of a breath of fresh air. But at the same time, it does feel like maybe he pulled back a little bit too much. And with the story, it can just seem a little bit too ABC.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's very by the number, cookie cutter. A lot of the scenes, again, like they could have been shortened because it's like a lot of not important stuff. Yeah. That's just interaction between the main two characters on their journey.
I'll tell you the one thing that really stood out to me, though, is the bad guy Necron, because he is a bad guy that you love to hate. He is basically a King Joffrey type where he's maniacal. He's got his ice powers. Every time he uses ice powers, animation-wise, the way that they show the ice stretching out, destroying the lands, is actually pretty cool. It's actually pretty terrifying. It's like, wow, this actually... I think it was an interesting choice to make ice the negative thing, where it's usually fire, that's all you see. Fire as, burning and hellfire. It's just typically, so for actually to use ice was cool. And this guy was having like his Tetsuo moment. Every time he uses his ice, he's having a headache. It's killing me. And he revels in it. There's so many times that he's destroying lands and he's just laughing. Ha ha ha. And there's one scene in particular near the end where the female character, she comes up to him and says, I want peace. If you could just stop this, you're destroying our people, you're killing people. Why don't you use your powers for good? And he literally just laughs, has this maniacal laugh in her face, kicks her away, calls her disgusting, and he's really enjoying being the evil, sadistic piece of shit.
Sounds about right. He's a good villain. I guess in the scope of everything, that's a bright spot in the movie.
And even the guy that she's with, he even has a sword fight with a guy. That's actually what really made me laugh. Not only does he use his ice powers, there's one scene where he's actually having a sword fight with a guy, but he's a fucking cheater. He uses his powers to like freeze you.
Right, like right before you're about to hit him. Yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah, he keeps on doing this. So it's like, ha ha ha. So he acts like he's doing a fair fight, but he loves teasing you and freezing you. And even in the final climactic battle, he tries. It doesn't work out, obviously. But just seeing him do that is really cool. But a complaint that people made about the movie is that his mum is the Ice Queen. She gave birth to him. And she's kind of just like a figurehead. She's just shouting, yes son, do it son. It's kind of like that was kind of a waste. Why is she even in the movie? She doesn't do anything except for she's that mother who's smothering her son, and he even talks bad to her. It's kind of like she kind of serves no purpose, really.
Her whole purpose is for him to yell like, I hate you, mom.
Yeah. So where's that? And let me find the main two characters' names now, because this is where I guess there's some other criticism, because Bakshi and his female characters, and to sidetrack a minute, I worked with this guy in security one point where he loved this movie just because the female character, she's wearing what seems like I don't know what you call it, a G-string.
Bikini. Yeah, she's wearing like a G-string and bikini.
A G-string and a bikini, and she's very voluptuous. And unlike the fairy in Wizards, she seems actually very mature. And the thing with this movie is for Bakshi to have her wearing this, especially when they're having in this Ice Kingdom where she never really seems to be cold, it just seems like the ultimate kind of fan service. And, I guess Bakshi couldn't rein in certain aspects that he's guilty of.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely guilty of that.
Lan and Tigra are your male and female male and female protagonists. But again, they're kind of useless. Like, Lan, in the beginning of the movie, he's like the first, his village is the first one that's just taken over by the ice, and he's like the sole survivor, and he's, looking for revenge. But he doesn't really have the power to really combat the bad guy, and even when he comes up against him, he loses, which is funny. So he's very plain. And as for Tigua, she's the daughter of the ice. She's the daughter of the Fire King.
Fire dude, yeah.
And she gets kidnapped by the ice people, and then she runs away, and then she meets Lan, and it's nice, but their chemistry is kind of nice to watch. It's kind of nice to watch Lon go after her in the fact, but there isn't much there because they don't talk much through the movie. It's kind of like, I don't know. I wish they had more of an arc. Like when you're watching the Lord of the Rings movie, there's things that happen in between the adventure. And to be honest, actually, Lon does get caught. I think there's one particular moment where he gets dragged underwater as well, has a little underwater battle, which is cool. But I think the movie could have done more of, as well as them getting to the Ice Kingdom and fighting the bad guy, I wish there was more eventful things in the middle. And Wizards had the same problem where you're just more interested in who they got to fight more than everything that's going on in the middle of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, there's a lot of lulling, and it probably wouldn't be that bad if there's like more dialogue and stuff. Like, a lot of what goes on between Lon and Tigra is very innocent. Like, I don't know if that was intentional to just show like the people caught in between the wars as just innocent kids and stuff, but it could have done with some either some trimming or some punching up, because it's like, it's nice that they're innocent. You can only, you could have shown me like just like 2, maybe 3 instead of like 7 of these interactions, and thrown in something else in there and make it a little bit more interesting. Even their relationship specifically, you didn't have to necessarily focus on the main story if you wanted that in there. It's just give me something else.
Well, let's talk about Darkhold for a minute, because he is the Batman. He just comes in, he never takes off his mask, and he's the hero because he's the one that makes all the fundamental moves that actually progress them to beat these guys. Ultimately, he's the one who actually wins at the end of the day as well. Now, the biggest criticism to the movie is that people are saying, this guy is a complete enigma. We don't know who he is. He just saves the day. He's a really cool character.
Batman.
He's Batman, but
get off my back.
You don't know how he relates to the story at all. And even the way
justice.
And even the way he wins, he kind of overpowers the ice guy. If you read between the lines, it's kind of hinted that he might be the son, he might be the father of Necron, and he might actually give him birth. So people were just like, they should have given him an actual story, not just made him the shadowy hero that just comes in and saves the day, because you would think that would be, the Lon character, not him. I didn't mind it, but I guess, again, this was another story element that could have made the movie better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, if he was going to be the guy in the end that's the final fight between the epic hero and villain, maybe a little bit more fleshed out, please. I'd even pick up on what you said when I was watching the movie, that he could have possibly been the father, and that's why he was able to fight the dude.
Wouldn't that have made it better? That it would kind of explain why he isn't at the forefront, because he doesn't want to do it. Or, like I said, always say about the Disney movies, they give you a little more emotional resonance because the characters have kind of relation, either the Lion King or Toy Story. There's some kind of dichotomy between the protagonist and the antagonist, something there. This time, you've just got the bland evil villain and this hero, but there's no real tie to them. And there's not even, why can this guy beat them? What's so legendary about him? I mean, even if the 2 main characters were looking for him, like, we need to find this guy, he's the only one that could beat him, it doesn't even work out like that. He's another tribe that is there, and they don't explain. Long story short, I don't really care that it didn't have a lot of story, but what could have made the movie less bland is just that if those little elements were improved upon. And again, the reason why I'm kind of struggling even reviewing this is because it is a very bland movie that I have to say the best thing about it is the aesthetics. The music is really good. Even though they don't speak a lot, the voice acting, the dubbing is very good. Bakshi's gotten a lot better at this as the movies have gone on and on and on. And the background designs, this is the thing that shook me the most. Thomas Kincaid is a popular American background and landscape painter. He actually helped Bakshi make this, as well as James Gurney, who's the author and artist of Dinotopia, a very popular graphic novel. And there's even the writer who works on Conan the Barbarian. A lot of people behind the scenes of note helped Bakshi make this, and there's a whole featurette behind the scenes of making this movie. Again, just like with Lord of the Rings, they filmed this in live action in black and white, so you can actually see the voluptuous actress. It's not just animation, you can see her, you can see the whole movie in live action for the most part. I mean, the people behind it making the movie, they were so meticulous in making it look good and act out well that it's a shame it's all brought down by a mediocre story.
Sounds about right. I could definitely see the connection to Conan and the artwork and whatnot when I was a kid, especially, one of my family friends collected Conan the Barbarian artwork, and he would have like posters and book covers and stuff on display. Looked very similar. The settings, the backgrounds, clearly professional work, very beautiful. Even like we were saying, the character designs, the movement and whatnot, especially because of rotoscoping, very professional looking, very beautiful. Even though it's kind of simplified story and everything, I did enjoy the action because it looked very realistic, for a cartoon, the way they were moving and everything. And like when you watch like movies and stuff, not to knock on them because they're enjoyable and everything, but like guys are waving around swords that are supposed to be like, like some of the one-handed swords are supposed to be like 20 pounds. They're waving around like it's 2 pounds. And then like sometimes they're using like a two-handed weapon. It's supposed to be like 30 or 40 pounds. And you just, they're swinging it around like it's nothing. And then in this, though, it actually looks like everything weighs the way it should. And like it's realistic. Their movements and everything's not all blocky, or it's not cut at weird angles constantly in the middle of the action. It's just, look at them doing this thing. We're going to give you like the one camera angle, maybe move to another one when it seems like a natural. Whereas when you're watching like a movie, a live action thing, which is connected because this is what's rotoscoping and whatnot, but it's like they chop it up to the point where you can't really even understand what's going on sometimes. That's like a big problem I have with a lot of action within the last 10 years. It's like they edit it to the point where it just looks like nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, to wrap this up, this is a very standard movie. This is Bakshi reining himself in, and I think this is more of a son of the 80s. I mean, this and Lord of the Rings are very standard movies, but again, what Lord of the Rings has against this is much more interesting characters. There's a lot of things going on with a lot of different people, with the Gandalf and all that other stuff. But here, it's just lacking in a lot of character stuff. And even though visually and aesthetically it's enjoyable and it's very nice to watch, this is a very lazy day movie. But it shows his age. It looks like an 80s animated movie. And to be honest with you, if this is the first Ralph Bakshi movie you watch, this is going to be a culture shock because this is so tame in comparison to what everything else is done. You should definitely watch this in sequence of his movies because, we're coming to the bottom of the hill. So this is where he's calmed down. And even the next movie we're going to get to, he kind of going back to his old ways, a little bit more crazy-ish. But this movie is just your standard sword and sorcery fantasy fare. He's done aesthetically it's good. It's just a bit too bland for me to say it really stands out. And unfortunately, I have to give it the rating vanilla for me personally because it just doesn't break any sort of mold. And Bakshi's other movies are just so crazy. They're more memorable. This one, unfortunately, is slightly forgettable, but it's an enjoyable movie, and it's a movie, if I saw it now, I would just think, that was an 80s animated movie I missed. But other than that, unfortunately, I have to say it's nothing super special.
I'll actually give it a low watchable. I mean, if you're a fan of animation, especially compared to all of his other works, this one might actually be worth your time to view and study and watch. Like if you had like a little bit of a curiosity with rotoscoping or something, is a fantastic example of what its peak could be. And then there's also, if you're a fan of high fantasy artwork, it's very beautiful looking artwork as well, especially background stuff. But like you were saying, and voice acting. Voice acting was good too. So there are enough positives for me to say this is more than vanilla, even though the story is very vanilla. The characters pretty vanilla, but like I think the other more tertiary aspects of a movie experience kind of a little bit higher up. So I would just say, like, especially if you're a student of these things, maybe worth your time watching. You know what I mean? Not for enjoyment, but for other reasons, actually.
Well, at least I can say, again, this shows Bakshi's diversity. He's done high, he's done low. This is very middle of the road. So, again, he's adding to his portfolio. And as I said in the beginning, if you look on the Rotten Tomatoes IMDb review scores, again, this is one of his more favorable movies. People think of it and remember it fondly. And I can't blame anyone for not liking this movie. And you are going to get that eye candy, especially with Tigua. You know what I mean? She's definitely good looking. And I will say she's not smutty. And some of those other Bakshi movies is just overtly sexual. The fact that she just looks and she's wearing scantily clothes, but she's a very mature character. Very, very mature female character. I wish she might have had more to do assertive. But to be honest with you, she's not a damsel in distress 100% either. So, you know.
She's just mostly an innocent kid. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. She could have been dressed a little bit warmer, I guess. But like you were saying, she's not, like, especially when we talk about one of the next things we're going to talk about, Cool World.
Yeah.
Holy crap, that's like the polar opposite of this character we're talking about.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit boring to watch, but at least it was not like, oh God, hitting me over the hammer with the sexuality thing again.
For real, 100%. So guys, I know this movie's actually quite loved, and some of you guys listening might be upset that I was so harsh on it, but again, I think it's still good. Just, I think it's kind of mediocre, but I want to know what you guys think, so let us know in the comments down below. And as we get closer to the end of this retrospective, which I'm very happy to be putting to an end, as always, I gotta say thank you to my boy, the young one, the Catface Killer. Thank you, sir, for joining me on this fun ride.
Yeah, I mean, at least it wasn't all coonskin, and actually, I guess it does get pretty bad at the end. Well, you guys will see.
You'll see. So, guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up if you like the conversation. Don't forget, the playlist will be in the top right-hand corner or in the description, so you can go back and listen to all the other Bakshi movies that we've reviewed and spoken about. But until the next one, guys, we'll say thanks for listening, and we'll see you later.
Get out my bat cave.